and welcome to the Janesville League of Women Voters Candidate Forum for the Janesville City Council election, presented in cooperation with the Janesville Public Access TV station, JATV. I'm Amy Golackson, a member of the Janesville League of Women Voters and moderator for the forum. The League is a nonpartisan political organization open to all people, men and women, who are inspired by the mission of holding fair elections and encouraging the electorate to stay informed and participate actively in government. If you are interested in joining or learning more about the local league, you can go to lwvjvl.org. We'll have the City Council candidates give their introductions in just a moment. First, let's go over the forum guidelines. Candidates have not received the questions in advance and will take turns being the first to answer the questions. Candidates, please keep in mind we're not trying to surprise you with unanticipated or overly complicated questions. Our purpose here tonight is twofold. One, we want to hear your answers to specific policy items, but two, we also understand that it's just as important to learn the process you use or will use to evaluate issues and make decisions as a City Council member. Let's meet the 8 candidates running for the 4 open seats on City Council in the election to be held Tuesday, April 5th. We'll begin with each candidate giving a 1-minute opening statement. Why are you running and what qualifies you to serve as a council member? We'll start with Mr. McCoy.
My name is Bill McCoy. I've been in the city for about 25 years. And the reason why I'm running is our infrastructure is really falling apart. Our streets, our roads, the bridges, some of the city buildings are still being lacked, and it's been a long time getting them repaired. I think my voice has been well known throughout the public of getting signatures and everything and getting stuff done and bringing it to the council, and sometimes I've had to go over council's head to get inspectors in here to inspect the bridges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. And next we'll hear from Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
Hi, my name is Deb Dongarra-Adams. I was raised in Janesville and I attended Parker High School. I left for college in 1979 and returned in 1984 to work in my family's business, which was Dongarra Title, and I currently manage land title. I currently serve on the City of Janesville Planning Commission. I am a board member of the St. Mary's Janesville Hospital and the Janesville Downtown Development Alliance. I'm a member of the Rock Green Board of Realtors, the South Central Wisconsin Builders Association, and the Forward Janesville Government Relations Committee. I've also served on the PTSA as a co-president when my daughter was in middle school, and I also volunteered on the committee for the high school referendum. This is my first shot at public office, and it's been quite an interesting one so far with the political climate, but I really believe that it's my time to give back to the city of Janesville, and I'm willing to do that. We have a great city, and you know, I just want to make it prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. Next we'll hear from Ms. Breyermoon.
Hello, my name is Andrea Breyermoon, and I'm a lifelong resident of Janesville. I'm a whistleblower, and through my carriage barn, brought to the attention of the public some pretty horrific procedures that we are still working to correct. And I've become, as a result, a spokesperson for many people, and my highest compliment today was to be called a gadfly, which Thomas Jefferson says is our duty as citizens of a republic, to keep an eye on every move that our government makes so that it does work, so that we are allowed to be the great people that we are meant to be. Our Pledge of Allegiance is a promise to something we have yet to achieve, and I feel really grateful to be a part of bringing liberty and justice to all one day very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Breyermoon. And next we'll hear from Mr. Parado.
Thanks, Amy. First, I want to thank the League for providing this forum tonight. It's a great forum for all of our citizens to learn about the candidates. My name is Frank Parado. I've served on the City Council for the last 2 years. I've also served on the Planning Commission as well as the Sustainable Janesville Committee. I'm 58 years old. I'm married to my wife, Bev, and have been married to her for 8 years. We have 4 kids, 2 terrific grandchildren. And I'm a family guy. Family is probably the most important thing to my life. What matters to me most is having family together on the holidays. I've served this community in many facets. I've served and volunteered for many non-for-profit organizations. I'm most proud of my opportunities that I've had to serve the United Way. I was a campaign chair for the United Way in 2004, and I also served on the Janesville Noon Rotary Club. I'm looking forward to the challenges ahead, and I look forward to your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And next we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thanks, Amy. Again, I'd also like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this forum tonight. My name is Sam Liebert, running for City Council. I've called Janesville my home now for 21 years, raised here. My first memories are playing on the play set at Harrison Elementary School. I'm a graduate of Parker High School, class of 2003. And the main reason I'm running for City Council is because I feel I want to give back. This city has given me a lot, a safe environment to grow up in, a good education, and I want the same for my family. I don't have a family yet, but I'd love to have kids, to buy a house here, to support a family, and continue to call Janesville my home. I bring a lot of, I believe, private and public sector background. I've owned my own company, and I've also worked at the federal level of government as a presidential employee. And with your backing and support, I'd love to ask for your vote on April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And next we'll hear from Mr. Bruner.
Thank you, Amy. My name is George Bruner, and I'm seeking a 4th term on the Janesville City Council. I believe public service is important, and I want to continue my service to the city of Janesville. I've been a Janesville resident for 47 years. I retired from the Janesville Police Department in 2004 after over 40 years of service. I served as the Janesville Police Chief from January 1994 to August of 2004. I have an associate degree in science from the University of Wisconsin-Rock County, a bachelor's degree of science from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and I also graduated from the FBI National Academy in 1989, where I took classes, graduate courses from the University of Virginia. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, serving from 1959 to 1963. I've served on the board of directors for Crime Stoppers, Community Foundation of Southern Wisconsin, and the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm still serving on the Grants Committee for the Community Foundation. I'm married to my wife, Vicki, for 46 years, and we have 5 children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And next we'll hear from Mr. Nylands.
Hello, my name is Mike Nylands. I was born and raised here in Janesville. I come from a rather large family. We've got 16 kids in our family that foster and adopted, but there was 11 Nylandses. I graduated from Parker High School in 1976. I was a student athlete. I also am a Y member, so I used to spend a lot of time running, an avid runner, run through the parks and see a lot of things that have changed over the years. And I guess I'd just like to see some of the things that we do have to continue. I'm retired from General Motors, 32 years. I'm married 12 years. I have 2 children in public schools. I also help out coach on their softball team, and I've volunteered at the Y, and I guess I'd just like to have a chance to get your vote April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nylands. And last we'll hear from Mr. Stever.
Thank you, Amy, and I'd like to also thank the League of Women's Voters and JA-TV for sponsoring this forum. My name is Russ Steber. I'm on the City Council now. On my 4th term, I will be running for my 5th. I presently work at the Rock County Sheriff's Office, where I'm a captain in charge of administrative duties in the jail. I will be retiring April 15th after a 33-year career. I hold a bachelor's degree through Upper Iowa University for public administration, associate's degree through Black Hawk Tech in police science, and I'm a graduate of Northwestern University Traffic School Police Command and Staff. The reason I'm running for council for another term is there's a lot of challenges that the city is going to meet in the next year. And I feel that with my experience on the council, that I'm up to facing the tough challenges and the needs of the community so that we maintain this beautiful city at the highest level possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stever. And now this is the question and answer portion of the forum. Candidates will have 1 minute to respond. We time the responses in order to give each candidate an equal opportunity to be heard and to try to cover as many topics as possible in a short amount of time. This first question will be for Ms. Dongarra-Adams to start. In general terms, define the role of a city council member.
I believe that a city council member would be someone that would be the voice of the community, trying to make sure that the city is maintaining everything the way that they should be, and also to try to keep the city's budget within what their spending guidelines need to be. I also believe that they play an important role in making important decisions that sometimes people don't want to make. But, you know, I know that they give their time and their energy, and I guess, again, it's the eyes of the community that I believe the city council member needs to be. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now we'll hear from Ms. Briarmoon.
The most important role of a city council person is to get the input from the citizens. And right now, unfortunately, in Janesville, our voice has been broken. We do not have our ward supervisors that are supposed to be elected to 2-year terms. That would be at least 30 people with inside information. We have such a huge volunteer spirit. We don't have to sell our parks. We have volunteers. We have citizens in this community that would mow those parks with our own lawnmowers and our own gas. We need to bust the doors open of our city hall. Right now, I am embarrassed to thank the League of Women Voters because they had to set up tables and microphones and chairs for this event tonight because the League of Women Voters is yet to be allowed to use our city hall, owned by we the people, to be able to do this forum where the entire city hall is already wired and set up with the cameras and the microphones and the chairs that we all need to do this so that they don't have to set it up and tear it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Briarmoon. And now we'll hear from Mr. Parado.
Thanks, Amy. The role of the city council member is very simple. It's the people. It's the people of this great city to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to move the city forward. And what I mean by that, there are a couple of key areas that I think all council members need to focus in on. One is economic development. I believe the role of the council member is to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make the city grow, to bring jobs to this community. I think the second thing for a city councilman to remember, and the most important thing perhaps, is taxes. We have to do whatever we can, and I mean whatever we can, to maintain taxes at a reasonable level. Last, I think, is quality of life. That's the one thing that separates our city from every other city in the state of Wisconsin. We have the finest quality of life, our police, our fire, our sanitation, just our general services. And for me, I am committed to maintain those services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And now we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thank you. Well, I believe the basic function of the city council and the city council member is first and foremost to be a voice of the community, someone who can be an advocate not just for the people who elected them, but also to be a voice for the folks who didn't elect them. I think since we would be elected at large, you have to represent the entire city and not just a specific part of the city of where you come from. You should also be a voice, I think, of the voiceless. Whether someone's registered to vote or not, I think it's incumbent upon all council members to represent the entire city. Also, someone should be someone, a council member should be someone who you can trust with your tax dollars, someone who you can trust to make the right investments for the future for the city. This is a place where I want to raise a family and buy a house, and I believe as we move forward, we need to start making investments to also think of the next generation of folks coming behind, our retirees, especially our GM workers, of who we want to be staying in Janesville, buying houses, and making a commitment to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And now we'll hear from Mr. Bruner.
Thank you. I believe the role of city council members is to represent the citizens of the community and be a voice of the community. We're a representative type of government. We're there to listen to the community, to all segments of the community, to get the input, and then to look at the difficult decisions that we have to make and the various questions that are coming before us, to consider all options, and then make decisions that are based upon what our citizens feel they want and desire, and also, more importantly, or just as importantly, what's in the best interest of the city. I think that there are a couple areas that we really have to look at as we go forward, and that's economic development and to maintain our infrastructure. The city council must also be good stewards of the tax dollar. We have to think about what we're doing and how we spend the dollars that are available to us. Again, we represent the community, and we should just work hard to get the input and do what is best for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And now we'll hear from Mr. Nylands.
Yes, well, I think I can agree with everybody so far as what a city councilman should be, and that is exactly it. You should be a member of the city. You should be, not just your voice, not just your group that you should represent. You should represent the whole city. There's things that can be done, like George said, we have a problem with the economy right now. We need to really look at some of the things that we're doing now and think of how we can help everybody, not just segments. So I guess that's all I can say.
Thank you, Mr. Nylands. And now we'll hear from Mr. Steber.
Thank you. I think one of the main things that is important for a council member is that you have to do what ultimately is best for the citizens of Janesville. And sometimes the decisions that a council member makes may not be popular with some segments of the city, but ultimately it has to be what's right for everyone at large. And that's probably the toughest thing that a council member can be faced with. We've dealt with everything from budget shortfalls to sidewalks to our recreation facilities. And ultimately, when we make decisions, it's not with one segment in mind. It's what's good for the taxpayers and what's good for the citizens of Janesville. We have to be good stewards of tax dollars. We have to be good policy setters. We have to be mindful of the budget and how we spend the money. And we have to act as the voice of the community. We have to be able to listen to what the community has to say, the people and the citizens of the city, and then act appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steber. And lastly, we'll hear from Mr. McCoy.
Good council member is for the people. When a person calls you on the phone to do something, you should be able to do it and get down to the business, brass tacks, and understand and go and get it done, instead of waiting for months and months and months and years. Also be the steward to the taxpayers for what they are going to be spending for their property taxes. Their taxes is what takes care of the repairs and everything of our infrastructure. Right now, the city of Janesville, our infrastructure is falling apart. It has been falling apart for years. And it's time for everybody to budget the money that is coming in and use the money wisely. The wise man always says, you've got to figure out where the money is at and use it, and do not spend it if you don't need to spend it.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Our next question will start with Ms. Briarmoon. Given the role of the city council member as you have defined it, and given the governor's proposed budget repair bill as it pertains to municipal government, explain your thought process how you would approach the upcoming budget shortfall.
Again, we absolutely need the input of the citizens. There is no way that 7 small little people can sit up here and come up with the solutions for our entire city of 60,000 people and 28,000 households. We could afford to allow our voices to not be heard and for us to be shut out of the process before, but now we're in crisis, and we absolutely have to get the citizens back into City Hall, and get the League of Women Voters back into City Hall. We talk about growth, but how fast and to the benefit of whom? We just took out a $250,000 city loan, us, we the people, and loaned it like a bank to a fat cat. Are you kidding me? I can't even put that to referendum and see if that gets a yes vote. I just don't think it would. And if we need money, we need to stabilize our tax base. And how do we do that? Let's start with our homes. If we would stop throwing people out of them, which we have the power to do, and keep homes on the tax base, stabilize the tax base, we've got money coming in.
Thank you, Ms. Briermoon. And now we'll hear from Mr. Parado.
I think what we're faced with, without any doubt, is a serious economic problem. There have been changes that have been proposed. I recently found out that we're looking at a possible $1.5 million reduction in state subsidy aid. That's a lot of money. So how we're going to deal with that is going to have to be, in my opinion, a value assessment. Last year, the city conducted a survey, the citizens responded, and we were able to prioritize our city services. So I think we're going to have to look at a bottom-up approach. We're going to have to look at the services that don't mean as much to the citizens and look at reducing those. We're probably going to have to look at perhaps looking at a hiring freeze. We may have to look at also a spending freeze. Some of our other subsidies for some of the amenities that we have, we may have to look at trying to make them more revenue neutral. These are going to be all tough decisions, and they're not popular ones, but ones that are going to have to be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And now we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thank you. Well, Andrea, I'm kind of a bigger guy. We're not all that small. It's whether you agree with what's going on right now in Madison or not. As Frank said, we're facing a $1.2 to $1.5 million I guess, budget deficit of shared revenues coming in with this next budget. And I think what we need to do is prioritize. I agree that completely. You know, the role of government, especially city government, is to provide basic services. That's your police, that's your fire, that's your EMT, wastewater treatment. And what the city should be doing is spending money first on what we need, and then if we've met what we need, then to look at our wants. The wants being the ice arena, pools, recreation. These are all important, but I believe the city should prioritize first on safety and security, whether it's physical security or your safety of your water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And now we'll hear from Mr. Bruner.
Thank you. Well, it's interesting because what's occurring in Madison, there's certain things that we believe we know. And one of the things, as was stated earlier, we believe the city is going to be facing approximately $1.5 million loss in revenue from the state. But then there's also an additional $320,000 that the city will lose in the area of recycling. At the same time, the ability for the city to increase taxes will be limited to approximately $100,000 in total. It's the things we don't know in the budget repair bill that's still being sorted out that are going to be difficult things for the council to face. I think the thing is we're going to have to look at where we're going. We can't continue on a path of spending, borrowing, and using reserve fund balance dollars to balance the budget. We're going to have to look at necessary spending and discretionary spending and look where we can make reductions in the budget. We're going to have to evaluate things and take a look at the city services that are being provided while maintaining public safety and basic services, garbage pickup and things like that. But it's going to be a difficult time and an interesting time as we find out what we don't know about the budget repair bill.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. Now we'll hear from Mr. Nylens.
Well, you know, they're coming up with these numbers as far as, well, 1.2 to 1.5 and 300,000 and then more and more. I agree with George. What we're going to have to do is look at what we need and what we want. And what we're going to need is services, essential services. We have to take care of those. And we can't do it on like a credit card and just think we can pay it back later, loans. That's not going to work. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make some tough choices. Everything's going to be up for grabs, and we're just gonna have to sit down and discuss it all. And there's no sacred cows. We'll just have to see what's out there, see what comes from Madison, and then we'll have to deal with it the best we can.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Nyland. And now we'll hear from Mr. Stieber.
Well, I think we've gone over the numbers enough. This is an unprecedented time that we're living in. If this was a year ago, we probably would have been talking about whether or not we put sidewalks in. I think the experience that we have on the council right now shows us that there are not going to be any easy solutions to this. This is a very complex problem with no quick fixes and no quick solutions. You can't wave the magic wand and work your way out of it. What it is going to need is thoughtful discussion, reasonable people making reasonable decisions on the future for the city of Janesville. I think the best thing that we can do in the midst of this, because we don't have the ability to raise taxes as high as we would like to, is to really work on economic development and bringing a greater tax base to the city of Janesville. As we develop our economy and we bring back jobs to this area, we'll be able to have a more solid base so that we can take and ensure that we have police, fire, EMS, and public works. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stieber. And now we'll hear from Mr. McCoy.
Well, one thing is the economic development. We do need a lot of help, and people on the telephones calling and getting businesses come to the city of Janesville, for number one. And council members should be on the ball to help in this matter. Not only the city manager, but us as well. Now, the figures that have been thrown out here, 1.5, and then you got the schools too. But main thing, you got to get these businesses come in, because right now we're having so many foreclosures in this community, empty homes. We've got a brand new hospital coming in out here. This hospital will bring at least 250 or more. So we hope that with all this, but our main sources is take care of our streets, roads, bridges, and make sure our trash is picked up, and our mere necessities for our police department, fire department, and that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. And now we'll hear from Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
I think we all agree again that there's wants and needs, and we need to understand what the items are that we would need. We need to analyze all the facts involved, and we need to prioritize what needs to be done. My experience comes from a small business, but I've been dealing with this dilemma for 2 years, and I've gone through every possible scenario to save jobs at our office. And some of the things that I looked at, one thing was the fixed expenses, and you can't imagine when you look at your fixed expenses what you might be able to save, just because when the money's flowing in, you don't pay attention to what you pay for your phone service or your leases or what your office supplies are. So that might be something to look at. It's just a thought that I had. And again, I believe that we need to prioritize what needs to be done. Some things might have to wait till next year or the year after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now this next question will start with Mr. Parado. What will you do when a citizen comes to you directly with a very specific complaint about a city employee or a city service?
Thank you, Amy. As we said in the beginning, our response to our citizens is the most important thing that we do. If I come across a situation about a particular city employee, for instance, it is not my job to go ahead and approach that person, but rather my role would be to report that to our city manager, ask him to investigate that, go through proper channels with city staff, and then deal with the matter as he sees fit. I think as far as, I'm sorry, the second part of the question?
If it's a specific complaint about a city employee or a city service?
And as far as the service, that's what it's all about. We need to provide service to our to our citizens. We need to listen to them, regardless of what it is. If a complaint comes in about one of our city services, we will deal with it by approaching the right city staff member, sharing the concern, and finding out what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And now we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thank you. Well, I believe as far as if there was a specific complaint, when it came to a city employee, again, I would report that to the city manager, Eric Levitt. I don't believe it's the council's role to micromanage the city employees, whether it be the snowplow drivers or the garbage men or the police. The city has an obligation and the authority to hire and fire the city manager, and it's his job, his training, his background, or she, to enforce the ethics codes or rights, therefore for the city workers. As far as services, that is a main part of our job, is to be the voice of the people. To report that, again, I would just follow the chain of command that's in place, starting with the city manager and making sure that the issue was resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And now we'll hear from Mr. Bruner.
Thank you. First, as far as a complaint against a city employee, a specific employee, as been stated, there are policies and procedures to follow, and actually rules and guidelines in human services. So therefore, I would report the incident and ask that the city manager direct it to the appropriate people for investigation and resolution. Regarding service, if a citizen comes to me with a complaint or a question on service, no matter how small, it's a big issue to that employee, or they wouldn't have come forward. So I think it's incumbent upon us to listen, understand what the problem is, and work towards resolution. We can do that through the city manager's office or through the immediate department head, depending on the level of the complaint and the level of service. So it's just a matter of listening, reporting, and asking for resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And now we'll hear from Mr. Nylands.
Like we've heard, there is a chain of command, and that is, if they didn't know where to look, that would be incumbent upon us to help them out and try to resolve that issue with an employee if it was an employee problem, and start with Mr. Levitt and work on down. With services, I mean, that is something, as George said, that is something that person was rather upset about it, so they figured they wanted to come to you because that's something that they felt was needed adjustment. So that would be something that you would have to take into consideration and try and help them work towards a resolution on that, and see what can be done to help keep our citizens happy, and not just, I guess I shouldn't say happy, but just find a resolution for the problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nylands. And now Mr. Stieber.
Well, I think one of the problems with sitting towards the end is by the time the question gets to you, your response is what they said. But the reality of it is, a lot of times, when you work in a service industry, having been in an administrative position, I encourage people that have got complaints or have issues to bring them forward, because we can't fix things unless we know about it. And that's what the council is there for. If a person has a problem, we're their sounding board. We're the people that we could take and move an issue forward if necessary. But more importantly, sometimes that person wants to be heard and they want to know what happened with that complaint. Now, we don't have to go into all the details, but I think that a reasonable person that comes to a council member and says, here's the issue, we should have the ability to have somebody in the city hall or a department head or whatever have the ability to come back and say, we looked into it, this is the resolution, and ensure that that person at least gets acknowledged that their issue was looked into properly. And I think more importantly, that person has that right to feel like when they come to you, it may be the only time, but it's an important issue to them. So I think we just have to be their sounding board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stieber. Now we'll hear from Mr. McCoy.
Well, I would be contacting Everett Levitz real quick on the telephone like I did today, and let him know what the problem was. And then in turn, if I didn't get any satisfaction, I would try to find the man's supervisor and let him know what the problem was. But I think Everett Levitz would handle it perfectly at the best ways he can at that time. And the services, people have came and said that certain services need to be upgraded and updone, and can you try to fix it? Well, that's when you go to all your other council members and you talk to them and say, has anybody else complained about this? If there has been, then start checking into it. And then get a hold of Everett and as well as the other people in that area to investigate and see if we can do to get it fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
Well, my guess would have been that I would have called Eric Levitt, and I'm trusting that the current city council members know the chain of command, but that's where I would start. One thing that I would add, just because I've been in this situation a lot myself, is that I would then call the citizen of Janesville back and let them know that I did make contact, that they should be receiving a call from someone, and if they don't hear back from them, to let me know, and I'll go to bat for them again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now we'll hear from Ms. Breyermoon.
The beautiful thing about a republic of we the people is that it is brilliantly capable of being able to protect each and every individual citizen, no matter how poor or how weak, against a city employee. And unfortunately, we have an imbalance of power here in Janesville right now that we are working to repair. It should not be the case that you would need $100,000 to $400,000 for a municipal litigation attorney retainer fee in order to be treated with fairness in the city of Janesville. But right now, that's unfortunately the situation yet. We need to clean up our ordinances, number one, so that if a city employee accuses you of something, you receive a citation so that you can plead not guilty and have access to due process. Number two, where's your ward supervisor that you can call? And number three, why do we have no access to our Citizen Board of Appeals so that a citizen can give permission to a city employee to back off when it's common sense to do so? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Breyermoon. This next question will start with Mr. Liebert. Would you consider a consolidation of some services with the county and/or other municipalities? If so, which services?
Well, thank you, Amy, for the question. This is something that's been done across the country and to some degree of success. I believe in Indianapolis, their local county and police have merged into one force. This would definitely be something I would be interested in looking at. I don't believe we should do that with our police department. I believe the Janesville Police Department should remain independent. But when it comes to things possibly like public works, transportation issues, perhaps maintenance and repair, whether it's our parks or our roads or water and infrastructure, it could be incumbent upon us to work closely with the county, and perhaps not even the county, even perhaps with other cities in the area, whether it be Milton or Beloit, some of the larger cities in the county, to work together to save on money, where there could be duplicity of services that kind of run over on each other between the different cities or within the county. So I would be open to it, but as far as specifics, I would be open to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And now Mr. Bruner.
Thank you. It can be sometimes difficult when you look at consolidation of services. Sometimes it's simply because of the geographical separations or the different responsibilities that may lie between, say, a county service and a city service or a municipal service. But I think the thing is, just as importantly, I think we should always be open to look at things that may work and can serve the city and serve the citizens well. But besides consolidation of service, and we do it now, we cooperate with the county and with other governmental agencies to do purchasing. So you can do things to save money by mass purchasing. For example, salt purchasing. We purchase salt in the wintertime, the county and the city purchase together. We can look at various ways to save funds through joint purchasing, as well as to consider any consolidation if there's a plan that would work.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And now we'll hear from Mr. Nylands.
On consolidation of some, I guess it would be city services and/or county services, that would be the main goal. Would be would there be a savings there? But I think as it's set up right now, we have a pretty good city services. We have a fairly decent setup as far as per capita and cost to us. So, like George said, maybe group buying and maybe even go state level. I mean, you can consolidate and buy things together as a larger group, like group insurance. I mean, that's where you get savings. So I think that would be a good idea to look into. So I guess that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nylands. And now we'll hear from Mr. Stieber.
Thank you. Well, the interesting thing about the question is, first of all, you have to realize that city government and county government are two different entities. County government is a leg of the state, and it has some very unique programs and things that it offers that the city doesn't. The city is more bricks and mortar and service, basic services like streets and roads, where the county deals with a lot of programming. So the ability to actually have a combined effort there might be a little bit difficult. However, I think there are things, like George said, with purchasing that are taking place right now that are beneficial to both parties. Additionally, I think we need to look at our school systems within the city, because we share a lot of recreation facilities that we can take and maybe pair with so that we can streamline our activities, our leisure services activities, so that we don't duplicate efforts. And if the city has an amenity that the school needs to work to make sure that we're using those tax dollars wisely within our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stieber. Now we'll hear from Mr. McCoy.
I agree with the recreation facilities through the city and county, as well as the city and county also. County has roads that got to get repaired. We need blacktop. We need blacktop in the city. We need concrete. We need them for the bridges, the iron and everything else. We can all get together on this and buy different things together. That way the county and the city and other cities next to us can combine together and buy everything together, as well as your schools can help each other out as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. And now we'll hear from Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
I would be all for combining services. I think that there are lots of options probably out there, but once again, we need to look at them. We need to understand the facts. We don't want to combine something and then have a service that we currently have lack in what it provides, and then prioritize what we need to get done. So I think we have to be more flexible given the current economic environment that we have, and I think that we should look at all possibilities. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now we'll hear from Ms. Breyermoon.
When I became a single parent of 5 very small children, I had the revenue to provide for 2 out of 5 of them. I did not try to figure out which 3 I should drown in the backyard or pawn off on other people. I wanted a middle-class lifestyle for those kids, and I created that with money that, if it would have doubled, we would have still been low income. We as a city need to know what we want, and then how much money we're going to have, and then how we're going to go about creating what we want. And we may need labor swaps, we may need to consolidate services, drop services, we may need to create work corps, create deputies, create volunteers, but it's putting the cart before the horse to say, should we consolidate services when we don't know what we want as a community or how much money we're going to have to work with, much less the citizen group that's going to figure this budget out for us. City Council can't do it all, and haven't been.
Thank you, Ms. Breyermoon. And now we'll hear from Ms. Parado, Mr. Parado.
Excuse me. Thanks, Amy. You know, I am very proud of the fact that this current council has always endorsed collaboration and consolidation, and we've asked our city manager to keep that in mind, and quite frankly, I think he's done a very good job. One example of that is the sole purchase. We've saved a tremendous amount of money doing that. So yes, we should always consider where it's practical and possible to consolidate and coordinate, particularly with our sisters in Edgerton and Milton, our neighboring communities. There's lots, I think, that we still can do. But again, there are pros and cons. But I believe that we can never shut the door on that, because I think it might be a very important asset for us to save some money for the city and improve the services that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And now this question will start with Mr. Bruner. How do you describe our city to people who don't live here?
How do I describe our city to people who do not live here?
That's right.
I describe it as being the best part of God's country. Janesville, I think, is unique, and we have so many wonderful things going for us. And so I describe it in the areas of quality of life, and that we have a great quality of life in Janesville. We have a wonderful park system. We have a river that flows through our community. We have a good school system. We have a great workforce. We have a lot of very positive amenities within this community. And then I look at the services that are provided to our citizens, whether it's through city services, county services, or other things. And we just have a great, wonderful place for people to come and live and grow and work together. And if we continue to do that, we're going to recover from this economic downturn, and we're going to be still the best city in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And now we'll hear from Mr. Nylands.
As I just call it Janesville, it's a nice little small town, but it's not too small, and it's a nice place to raise a family, because that's exactly what I'm doing. And it's very, you can know your neighbor, and you're not afraid of them. And it's just very nice place to live. Would you want them to move there? Sure. I mean, because we have had a mass exodus with our GM plant closing. So, but we still have plenty of city services, parks that are very attractive, and it's a very nice place to live. And it would be some place that I would tell, and I have told people, it's a nice place to live, and that's why I haven't moved when I've had chances to. So I like it here. So it's very nice.
Thank you, Mr. Nylands. And now we hear from Mr. Stieber.
I think the best way I can describe the city of Janesville to somebody that doesn't live here is, it's my home. This is where I live. I moved here in 1978 when I got out of the service. And from the time I moved here, I enjoyed the parks, the area, the recreation, the people. This is a Midwestern town with Midwestern values. This is a place that you can get to know your neighbor, that you can meet them on the street, and they're open, they're friendly. They're the type of people that when someone's in need, they come to their aid. This is my home. And I really, really have to say that at times when we struggle, the best thing that I can say about it is that we band together and we make it better. Janesville is a great place. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. And more importantly, it's a great place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stieber. And now we'll hear from Mr. McCoy.
Well, I tell them, we got a good Rock County Fairgrounds out here. We got a lot of country and western singers who come in here and sing. We got the most incredible things going on here in the city of Janesville. Sure, we lost our GM plant, but we got friends and neighbors. Everybody's helped one another out. And when I first came to town, my ex-father-in-law, we was downtown, and people was knocking you on the doors and helping everybody out down there, and they'd come out and give you different things. Sit there at the stores, and it was you just tell them you're happy. This is a beautiful town. Got a nice rock river down here if you want to go down and fish. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Now we'll hear from Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
I wouldn't be sitting up here and running for city council if I didn't think that we had an awesome city, because I certainly can't sell anything that I don't believe in. And when I was a smart little college student and I came back here, I vowed I would never come back to Janesville. But I came back and I got married and I had a child, and she went through the school system, and we have just wonderful things in the city. The location, the citizens, the school system, the way the city takes care, the city workers take care of the city. everybody looks at that, and they were talking about economic development. That's what people look at when they come to this community. And, you know, I don't think we have a very hard product to sell because we got it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now we'll hear from Ms. Breyermoon.
I sell our city a lot. I'm a real estate agent, and I tell people that we're an upper middle class suburb of O'Hare Airport, the largest and busiest airport in the universe. So we're just outside the center of the universe, and often tell people they can do 4 10-hour shifts on the loop and spend 3 days in paradise. And people in Chicago think that my 4th ward, a house for sale, is a country getaway home because we have grass terraces with mature trees, big yards, off-street parking. It's pretty crazy. So even though we certainly lack yet in some diversifying energies, we could certainly use more cultural diversity, and my friends say that it's got to be the most boring town in the universe. We are strategically located between Chicago, Madison, the Twin Cities, and Milwaukee. And if you don't think investors don't know that, they do.
Thank you, Ms. Breyermoon. And now we'll hear from Mr. Parado.
Thanks, Amy. I believe I'm uniquely qualified to answer this question. I was born and raised in New York, came to the Midwest some 20-some-odd years ago, and had no idea what I was coming into. I had heard stories about the people in the Midwest, but I'm going to tell you something. This is my home. Not New York. This is my home. This is where I live. This is where my kids grew up. These are the people that I love. They're giving, they're caring. If I was able to put an ad on the paper, I would take my good friend Russ Stieber and put his words on tape and have that replayed over and over again for people to understand how good our community is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Frank.
Parado. And lastly, we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thank you. Well, I think I was similar to Deb growing up. I remember saying, I'm going to get out of Janesville and never come back. And I've had the profound honor to work and travel across the country, West Coast, East Coast, Florida, and I keep coming back to Janesville. And this is my home. It's been my home for 21 years. I explain it to my friends as a very blue-collared, middle-class, hard-working town. The home of the oldest General Motors for 80-plus years. Very adaptable community. When it called for it, we had to build tanks. When we didn't need it, we built cars and trucks to provide for our family and our economy. I would definitely say, too, it's a very diverse and open place. I mean, the fact that it's the hometown of both Paul Ryan and Russ Feingold, 2 people who couldn't be more ideologically apart. But they come here. They went to Craig. They're from Janesville, and I think it's a great place to raise and have a family, and I look forward to doing the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And now this next question starts with Mr. Nylens. What does it mean to you to be a representative of all the people of Janesville?
Well, all the people of Janesville, I guess I would take that as an honor because there's a lot of diversity, even though we don't see it all the time. It's a very I'm just gonna say I'm kind of at a loss for words here, which is a good thing. But I guess I'm just not real sure with your question here. I guess
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. What we're trying to get at is when you're representing the whole city rather than a specific ward, how would you, what does that mean to you, and how would you approach that?
Well, to approach it, you just need to get consensus from everybody, and that would be, keeping an open mind on whatever is being brought before you, and you can't go into it closed mind and just figure you're just going to do it this way because this is the way we've done it in the past. We need to let everybody have their say, and listen and try and make sure that you're not going to make everybody happy at once, but you can try. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nylens. And now we'll hear from Mr. Stieber.
Thank you. This is kind of like one of our prior questions. When you're a representative of the people as a city council member, you represent not one particular section of the city, not one particular ward. You represent everyone. And sometimes that's very difficult because at the end of the day, the decisions that you make have to be what's best for the city at large. And that sometimes is an awesome responsibility. But you do that by listening to people, being a sounding board, by asking questions, being active in the community, and truly caring about the community that you serve. So I guess the biggest thing about being a representative of the people is, first of all, it's very humbling. And secondly, I think it is one that it should not be taken lightly. And lastly, I think it's one that a person has to go into with an open mind, without a personal agenda, and to do what is best ultimately for the people that live in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stever. And now we'll hear from Mr. McCoy.
That's a good one there. I guess I would start out like, I don't know. I'd be very proud, number one, to be for the people of the city of Janesville, because I know I'd be willing to stand up and fight for everything that they ever wanted, to try to get it as best as I could, and help them in any way, shape, or form. And as well as everybody, you know, I've done it in the past, of getting things repaired and try to get things helped. I'd feel honored if that's what you want to do. I mean, that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Now we'll hear from Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
Well, I look at it as a pretty big job, and you know, it is going to take a lot of a person's time to do, and they better be willing to listen to the community and the citizens of Janesville. And they may be getting calls at times when they normally wouldn't get calls, but that's part of the job. And you need to listen to what people are saying, and you need to express those concerns as a city council member to the city council. And again, we all know the decisions I'm sure that people make aren't always going to be decisions that everybody likes, but hopefully we make the decisions that would be the best decisions for the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now we'll hear from Ms. Briarmoon.
To represent all of the people, we need to reopen the voice of the people. We have 17 citizen board chairs that are not in attendance right now to our city council meetings, because most of them right now happen to be the city council members themselves. Got a lot of double and triple and quadruple dipping going on here. We do not have our ward supervisors in attendance at our city council meetings. We need committees to clean up the ordinance, to figure out the budget. We need a committee to monitor the voting process, to make sure it's not compromised. We need a committee that's going to freeze evictions pending the national robo foreclosure investigation. 7 people cannot provide everything that 60,000 people need. And when they've tried to do so, they failed miserably. The advantage of 7 people railroading everything is that they could annex land, turn it into a TIF district, rezone it, fund it, and let somebody who bought it 30 days earlier make a huge profit on it. That's really, really efficient. It's not helping the majority of the people.
Thank you, Ms. Briarmoon. And now we'll hear from Mr. Parado.
Thanks, Amy. Having served on the council for the last 2 years, words come to mind. How proud I am to be able to serve the citizens of this great city. It's humble to realize that you ran for election and the people voted you in. That's a humbling feeling. Certainly privileged to be able to do this. And above all, it's probably my high honor that I've been able to serve as a council member. Just to understand that the people of this community have placed their trust in you to make decisions that are in their best interest is something that perhaps you can't even place into words. So again, that's what it means to me to be a city council member. I'm so proud to be one, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And now we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thank you. Well, I believe it's incumbent upon all city council members to represent the entire city. there are the pros and cons of having aldermanic districts, but I believe the progressive thought that went behind having 7 members to represent the entire city is that you wouldn't have different sections of the city fighting against each other for resources or development, but a unified, for the most part, mind going forward on what's best for the entire city as a whole, moving forward to advance. I believe it would be an incredible and humbling experience to represent the entire city. The fact that people do put their confidence in you based on your background, your experience. I've had the privilege to work for President of the United States, but I think the higher honor would be being elected by your peers in your own hometown, giving you that backing and support, saying, we believe in you, we support you, and we believe you're the best choice. So I look forward to hopefully filling out that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And lastly, on this difficult question, we will hear from Mr. Bruner.
Representing all the citizens is public service. It's an honor, it's humbling, and it's a huge responsibility. I think it's incumbent upon city council members to learn about the issues. It's incumbent to listen to the citizens, to hear what they have to say. And then once you've learned about the issues and you've listened to the citizens, you make the decisions in the best interest of the community, in the best interest of all residents. In the end, it's rewarding to work for the citizens of a community. It's an honor, and like I say, humbling, but very rewarding. And it's a great privilege to have the trust of the community to do their business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And now we'll have one more question, and then we will have the candidates give their 1-minute closing statement. This next question starts with Mr. Stieber. Based on question number 1, where we defined the role of the city council member, how do you respond to the recent council decision to send a letter on behalf of the city council to the legislature in Wisconsin, Madison?
Well, that letter was actually brought forward by me, and I felt that all partisanship apart, and my good friend Frank and I agree to disagree on this, but my feeling on it was this. First of all, I know what collective bargaining has done for the city of Janesville. It has allowed the citizens of, or the city employees to work with management on an equal basis. It's given them the opportunity to take and work together to come into an agreement that's binding and mutually respected and beneficial to both. The city of Janesville has had a long tradition of working with their employees. Last year when we were short on time or on money, the city employees stepped up to the bat, and they agreed to give back their raise for the year. The biggest thing that I have to say about it is that I don't think that the state of Wisconsin should tell us how to take and deal with our city employees or manage our money. And that's where Frank and I agree to disagree on it. I understand that the state's broke. I understand that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. There's no disputing that. But when it all boils down to is I think that the city of Janesville needs to have control over its employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stieber. Now we'll hear from Mr. McCoy.
Well, I didn't draft a letter, but I was there when you started drafting it, but I wouldn't have done it. We can agree to disagree on that part, but I think it's anybody's own individual to do it if they want to send a letter to them or whatever. That's the way I'll leave it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCoy. And now we'll hear from Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
That's a really tough question you're asking, Amy. I have my own personal feelings on this particular item that's been going on, but I guess I would say that, again, it is an individual's personal right on what they want to decide they want to think about that, and I do believe that the city of Janesville should not have sent the letter out regarding that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now we'll hear from Ms. Bryan.
I have a larger concern in that there is a federal law called the Hatch Act that prevents government employees from being on a ballot or from running for being elected to office. And two of our city council members, and I think it's unfortunate to the general public, if this was enforced, would not be on our city council. And if that was the case, then we would not have had this letter brought up, and individual city council members could have written their individual letters if they wanted to. But Mr. Stieber and Mr. Bruner, longtime government employees, and unfortunately, a lot of the things that have happened benefit the employees at the expense of the general public, of our citizenship. I have a real concern that corporations at one time paid up to 40% of their incoming revenues before expenses, and now they expense out everything and don't pay taxes. Why are there people getting million-dollar bonuses while people are getting evicted from their homes? What's wrong with this picture?
Thank you, Ms. Briermoon. And now we'll hear from Mr. Parado.
Thanks, Amy. I did disagree with my fellow councilman who pushed forward to send that letter. I had no problem at all with us as individuals sending a letter, but I felt very uncomfortable with the fact that we were writing that letter without any public input. That's one part of this that bothered me. I would have rather seen us to have take a little extra time to see what the rest of the community feels before we represented the citizens of the city and gone ahead and put a letter like that together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And now we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thank you. Well, I'd just like to first make a correction to Andrea. The Hatch Act only applies to partisan office, and this is nonpartisan, so that would not apply.
Unfortunately.
I agree with what Russ Stieber and the majority of the council did. This obviously is a very personal issue to a lot of people. It's very divisive. It's very partisan. But I do believe it is incumbent upon the city government, its elected officials, to make its stance known, whether that's the majority 4 or 5 out of 7 to do so. I think it took a lot of courage, a lot of backbone to do so. You know, it's a lot of, I've taken a stance on this. That, you know, I don't agree with what's going on in Madison, and I've had a lot of more conservative friends say, you know, why are you doing this? Just be quiet. It's going to hurt your chances at getting elected. But I would rather lose an election based on what I believe in than get elected and remain silent. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And now we'll hear from Mr. Bruner.
Well, my role and decision to vote in favor of sending the letter was a difficult decision on my part. Myself and another council member were probably two moderates as far as this discussion and debate was concerned. But I think, moreover, I was concerned with the unknowns of what was being presented in Madison, and there's still a lot of unknowns that are out there that we don't know about yet that are going to affect the business of the city. And I was more concerned about process and open debate. And that's the reason I went the direction I did. I stand by what I did. It's one of those things where you make a decision. It's a difficult decision to make, but I really believe that we had to say something. At the same time, I will say that I sent my own personal communications to different representatives telling them how I felt about different aspects. So we did it, and we can't change it, and we're not going to change it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And lastly, we'll hear from Mr. Nylands.
I guess I would not have been in favor of the council sending a letter because it is supposed to be a nonpartisan, and that is a very partisan issue and very divisive. And it ends up, there's a lot of division up in Madison right now, and that was just adding more to it. But if they wanted to send their own letter, I have a 10-year-old daughter that was, just last night, she was proofreading her letter that she wanted to send to Mr. Walker. So that's, you know, that's up to the individual. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyland. We've come to the end of the question and answer portion of the program. Candidates will now have 1 minute for a closing statement. We are now back to Mr. McCoy to begin that.
Well, I know I left out quite a bit a while ago. I am a Vietnam veteran, and just like I said, I have lived in this community for approximately 25 years. I do have 5 kids. I do have 8 grandchildren. My kids, a lot of them live in Colorado. Timmy, the one that's in the Air Force, is military police, which lives now in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is just like I said, military police, guard and missile sites. I do have a daughter here in town that is a nurse. And so I am very well known in this community of things that I have tried to help this community do, and I have succeeded in trying to get a lot of things done, such as the Jackson Street Bridge. I fought to get this thing to get it repaired, and I'm glad I did, as well as a few other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. And now we will hear from Ms. Dongarra-Adams.
I really want to see this city prosper, but I'm concerned with, given the budget situations, I don't want our city to deteriorate. I don't want the services to deteriorate. I don't want our school system to deteriorate. You know, again, we've got a great product to offer, and it's our city, but it's because of all of us. It's because of the workforce that we have, the location that we have, the school system that we have, that makes Janesville a great place to live. And if you decide to elect me on April 5th, I will do my very best to make the city prosper and to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dongarra-Adams. And now we'll hear from Ms. Breyermoon.
We need to stabilize our tax base by keeping folks in their homes and keeping those homes off the market. We need to restore the voice of we the people because we so desperately need your input. We need all of our elections in the fall, like Minnesota realized, just makes sense. We need to apply the Hatch Act to nonpartisan elections. We can apply that to here, Janesville. And our voting machines need to be properly monitored. We found out last year that the black boxes sit on desks. Nobody watches, takes them to the courthouse and back to City Hall before they get put into their little containers. Black boxes are picked up when the polls close, but the ballots are not. Ballot bags were left underneath teachers' desks the last time there was a recount. So unfortunately, we don't know that we have a fair election in Janesville right now. And the allegation can be made that it isn't fair, unfortunately. So we need to create a system of proper monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Breyermoon. And now we'll hear from Mr. Parado.
It's been my privilege and high honor to serve the citizens of Janesville for the last 2 years. To say that times have been difficult would be an enormous understatement. But you know what? We survived, and we moved, and we're moving forward. We're getting stronger. I'm going to ask for your help and your support by voting for me on April 5th. I promise that I will do everything possible, provide my skills as an analytical individual. I have a no-nonsense approach to making decisions. I have no problem making the hard decisions. I promise that I will continue to work with you with honesty, integrity, and purpose. I want to thank you all for listening tonight. I want to thank the League for this opportunity. May God bless you all, and may God bless this great city of Janesville. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parado. And now we'll hear from Mr. Liebert.
Thank you, Amy. Again, I'd like to thank the Janesville Access Television and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight. You know, as I've listened to everyone here, this is a very diverse group of people. I'm glad to see 2 women running. I think it'd be great to add some more diversity to the council. Janesville is always and ever changing. We're located right on I-90. We're between Chicago and Madison and Milwaukee. And I've had the profound honor in my work and traveling the past several years to talk about Janesville, to brag about where I come from, that I had a childhood where I could run around and play. I remember having unlocked doors at the house. We didn't have that where I was born in Milwaukee. And so I just know I would be incredibly humbled and honored to have your vote, your support on April 5th. And I promise to be open and easily accessible, transparent, and would look forward to working with everyone moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liebert. And now we'll hear from Mr. Bruner.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and JATV 12 for hosting this candidate forum. Community service is important, and I am seeking re-election to the Janesville City Council to continue my community service. Janesville continues to face many challenges as a result of the economy. With the challenges comes opportunities to work for improving the quality of life in Janesville. We must work to pursue economic development and to strive to diversify our economy. Economic development, maintaining city services, and being good steward of the tax dollar will be important. We have to build off the positives within Janesville, our workforce, our schools, our business climate, location, parks, recreation, and other amenities. Seeking re-election will provide me with the opportunity to have an active role in meeting the challenges, but more importantly, pursuing the opportunities to build a strong Janesville. Please vote on April 5th and consider casting your vote for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bruner. And now we'll hear from Mr. Nylands.
I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum. I feel I get a chance to give back. I've been able to call Janesville my home for the last 53 years, and I'm proud of that. And I believe that Janesville future relies on a new philosophy of responsible spending. And we're not in a position to spend frivolously. We need to look more at a savings account instead of a spending account. So I guess what I would like to help guide Janesville in that direction, and I would appreciate your vote on April 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nylands. And now we'll hear from Mr. Stieber.
Thank you. Well, as everyone has said, thank you to the League of Women Voters and to JATV. I'd like to thank my fellow candidates for their desire to serve the city. Janesville is faced with some very unique and challenging obstacles. We have a budget that's uncertain. We have some economic issues that we're dealing with. But through it all, I know that this city is going to fare well. The citizens are going to band together, and we will move forward as a community. I've had the distinct honor to serve the council and the city, citizens of Janesville for 4 terms. I'm seeking my 5th, and would hope that the people would allow me the opportunity to serve them again for another 2-year term. The next 2 years are going to be challenging, and there are no easy solutions. There are no quick fixes. It's going to take dedication, experience, and desire to serve the city and work through the issues ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stieber. We've been talking with the 8 candidates who are running for the Janesville City Council. Thank you to all of you for their participation, and to JATV for their assistance in producing this program. Thank you also to the community members who are here today to hear what the candidates have to say. The spring election for Janesville City Council will be held Tuesday, April 5th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. On the ballot, we will be voting not only for city council members, but also school board commissioners and a Wisconsin Supreme Court judge. Impartial information about the Supreme Court candidates is found on both the Janesville and the Wisconsin League of Women Voters websites. If you're not registered to vote, you may do so prior to the election here at the Hedberg Library until March 16th, or at the Janesville City Clerk's office through April 4th. You may also register at the polls on Election Day with required identification. For answers to your questions about voting, contact the City Clerk's office during weekday business hours. Your vote is very important. Thank you for watching and showing an interest in being an informed voter.